Asulagini Pistikahayugagi Atatapelagini Ko'y nagsasawaki Ang iyong minaligay Insya kulugabi Insya kulugabi
Good evening and welcome to the launch of Pauktuutit's residential school commemoration project. It is entitled Nipihatugut Sanaugatigut, the TRC virtual quilt. My name is Catherine Irngout, and I'm the manager of abuse prevention at Pauktuutit. We hope to share with you tonight the contributions that people have made to this project and to celebrate our successes. We hope to share with you the contributions that this evening will have through the good work that's being done, not only to show Canadians the effects of residential schools, but to show our resilience, our healing through art and culture.
Essentially what you had prior to World War II was the idea that to keep the native native. Now, keeping the native native essentially meant that no white man would ever go up there anyways. It was too expensive to assimilate the Inuit. So while in the first two phases you had these campaigns to assimilate First Nations peoples, for the most part they left Inuit alone. The triage that basically managed the North was a combination of the RCMP, who were there to show the flag. Then you had the churches, who were responsible for health and welfare and saving souls. And then you had the Hudson Bay Company, which was basically the economic connection. So what you have after the end of World War II is the third phase of residential schools. And this is the period where policy is integration. The government takes on the opinion that keeping the native native didn't work. Inuit must be prepared to take their place in the new North. And that becomes the entire new catchphrase, the buzz phrase. And essentially what they did was between 1955 and 1963 was they got as high as 75–80% of the youth in the schools. So you go into a school where you're in a mass group of small kids. There's little to no emotional contact. Boys and girls are separated in the Catholic schools. They have separate hostels, separate areas in church, so you're separated from your siblings. And on top of that, we have a regimented militaristic system. So you think in terms of the kids where they don't understand what's happening, it's a foreign culture to them. You get whacked on the knuckles with rulers for being bad. In some cases there were physical and verbal abuse where you had abusive teachers or priests or nuns that actually literally talked down to them. A lot of this abuse was brought back into the Inuit communities. For example, when you talk about the generational impacts, you talk to younger Inuit today, particularly the women, and you get a feel that a very high percentage of Inuit women today have been at some point in their lives victims of sexual abuse. And a lot of this is traced directly back to the residential schools. They're being taught sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly by the school system that their culture has no value. They're not wanting to eat their traditional diet. In many cases, they're embarrassed by it. They want to speak English, and they're coming home to a place where this new North that they were prepared for doesn't exist. It's not there. And then on top of that, they're bringing back all kinds of social problems with them. The disconnection from their families and not knowing how to cope and how to deal with the sexual and physical abuse. We have to keep in mind too, there was no counseling programs. It wasn't like when they got off the plane and were brought back home that there were counselors there to help them deal with post-traumatic stress syndrome or anything else like that. You're just brought home, and that was essentially it. You're on your own.
I thought that was water until she told me it was pop.
First you got the good country food and then you got the pop and chips.
Is a donut?
Yes,
Tim Hortons?
probably. This is a wall hanging that has the history of what happened when colonization came for the Inuit. And Annie, what's this part? What?
Elvis.
And what was it before Elvis?
The throat singers.
Drum dancer, the throat singers. Caribou, fish, and a purse, an Inuit making tea on a hullet.
And then what happened after they made tea on the hullet, after the colonization came, what were they doing?
Dressing up, going to the bar, drinking vodka, having glass on the side.
And there's the graveyards over there, those little white crosses where people tend to end up, or at the green building, which is the women's shelter, where females who are fleeing abuse for whatever reason, or people end up for alcohol treatment, mental health center, down south usually. It really reflects what's really happening today with young people.
There is one wall hanging which is we are going to bring it, the one which you were saying just now, that I'm going to bring it to Ottawa on March 7th to Pauktuutit. And there is another one which they are making on the other side that is going to go to the International Women's Day, which is going to be exhibited at the museum, in my understanding. We always try to be as pleasant as we can, all the time. We laugh, we make jokes out of things, and that's the way we make our work better looking for everybody. We have a great feeling about it when we do that. We are very proud of what they are doing. You heard what Sky said, right? She said she's so happy to tell this is what her true feelings. In this crowd, it's only the people who knows each other. So we have the freedom to speak. It's a great part of healing because it's extremely relaxing. They are able to open up their feelings rather than bottling up inside themselves, and to show to the rest of the world through an art form. It's a very visual form. Many people doesn't want to sit and listen to the story of others. They might not have time, but this is more visual, so people will have a look at it, hey, and they will see what is this. And I'm very proud of all the ladies who are helping us together to make this finish.
Good morning, Kitikmeot Heritage Society. My name is Renee Krukas. I am the Executive Director of the Kitikmeot Heritage Society in Cambridge Bay, Nunavut. We run cultural programming and a cultural center in the community of Cambridge Bay, but also in the other communities of the Kitikmeot region. Our main goal is to preserve the culture, the language, and the history of Nunavut. Well, we were really lucky. It all sort of happened by accident. We had done a really big mural project last year, and Nunatsiaq News covered the story, and that's how Sephora found us. Each person who was involved sewed their own piece that went onto the wall hanging, so it was really special. In discussing with the elders who would be the best people to be a part of the project. They wanted people who did have the residential school experience, but they also wanted younger people to be a part of it so that they could learn about that experience and also learn why things are the way they are now. And it was really, really important to them that there were young people there. So it was a really nice group and a really good combination of people. It really showed that the residential school experience has affected everybody. For some of the people who were involved, they weren't so comfortable sewing. They said they didn't know how, and they weren't so comfortable, and they were maybe embarrassed. But after participating in these activities and seeing everybody kind of take a chance and immerse themselves, it was really, really great because by the second session, everybody was sewing, and everybody was feeling very, very comfortable and safe, and yeah, it was great. The constant theme was just what has been lost, and the tragedy of what has been lost in terms of the culture, the language, and a lot of people I found to be very, very sad, but also very hopeful and saying, I do want to learn my language. I do want to feel proud of my culture, and talking about ways to do that, to learn and to feel proud again. And yeah, I think that was more the constant theme in the conversations, what could be done.
This piece is called in English Mother's Touch of Warmth, and Inuktitut Ananama Nalininga Sailinakto. What it represents is it's a mother and a child, and the reason why it's a mass is because it represents all the mothers that had their children taken away in residency school, and this child represents all the children that were taken away, because when that happened, it took away the love and the warmth that the mother holds to her child. Because as for myself, when I went to residency school, I became quite distant from my mother, and that's why I thought of this piece. Because even though I went quite late, what I went through because of the hardship and the racism I faced when I went back home, I was much more distant from my mother. So what this represents is when they were taken away, all this warmth that it represents was cut off, and when they went home, they were no longer in that embrace of love and warmth, and that disappeared. And it took, for me, it took a while, about a good 10 years to get it back to where it used to be before I went to residency school.
Children from Riglet were taken to residential school as early as 5 years of age. Some children were able to begin their schooling in Riglet and were sent to residential schools after completing grade 8. There were schools in Northwest River, Cartwright, Nain, and Makhovik. Many residents of Riglet attended the dorm in Northwest River or Lockwood School in Cartwright. The people of Labrador who went to these schools are not recognized by Canada as having attended residential school, so the apology given in the House of Parliament was not to Labrador people. Yet there are many scars and hurts felt by those people who had to leave their home, their culture, and their family for 9 months of the year.
I was 5 when I went to school, and I was 11 when the dormitory closed down. So for relaxing for what happened to me in the dormitory, my mom taught me how to do crafts, and one of the big things was I learned how to do grasswork at the age of 11. I find it relaxing doing crafts, and sometimes now lately, since I talk about it a lot, I feel a lot better.
Riglet Inuit are a proud people. We have endured and survived. One of the cultural crafts that have continued here is grasswork. Inuit women pick grass and prepare it to make beautiful crafts. This has continued for many generations and is still being done today by young and old alike. Just like any craft, grass sewers find it to be a calming and relaxing way to help ease any stressors which they may face. The grasswork creations show how we are resilient and have kept this cultural tradition alive, despite the impacts of residential schools on our lives.
My name is Charlotte Wolfrey. I'm a board member for Pauktuutit, representing women in Nunatsiavut, and I'm from Riglet, Labrador, Nunatsiavut. Well, the women in my community that did this sewing project, they said that, that was something that was in their culture, sewing these grass pieces. And they used it all the time to relax and stuff like that. So they feel that it was healing. Well, in the first place, Nunatsiavut isn't even recognized. The people in Nunatsiavut who went to residential school is not even recognized by the federal government as having went to residential schools. So the kids were taken, even some of them at age 5, but for the most part it was people, when you got to grade 8, in order to get further education you had to go to the dormitory in Northwest River, and then there were other schools earlier you could go to. There were 4 schools. Nain had one, Makovic had one was in Muddy Bay around the Cartwright area, and one was in Northwest River. But my age, the children my age and the people that came under me or whatever and before me, they went to the dorm in Northwest River. And the federal government don't even recognize that that was a residential school. So the apology that was given by Canada wasn't given to the people who went to residential schools in Labrador. So that's the first step, I think, is to recognize and to say we're sorry, and to make the Labrador people, give them the same rights and the same compensation packages and stuff like that everybody else had. That's one of the first things. And I don't think that there has been a lot of healing. Some people have taken it upon themselves to do things and to tell their stories and to go to, they're invited to all these, the gatherings that happen in Halifax and Inuvik and Saskatchewan or wherever they happen. They've been invited and taken part in those things. But with regards to the apology, they weren't included. And there has been some money that came from the residential schools funds to do programming in some of the communities. And I don't know how you can give us money to do those things and then say we didn't do anything. We didn't force you to go to residential schools, or you didn't have residential schools. It seems kind of strange. But anyway, so there has been like some healing. There has been some programming in the communities, but I think that the first step, the step for Canada to say we were wrong and we're sorry, has not happened to us.
Nama ino zirmi atu mayani atu tu inna niama. Niang itu ngani tiring inna ama nukha kalla tu inna langang inama. Niang itu ngasa khang itu ngasa. Niang itu ngasa khang inama. Inu zirni sapili.
Pauktuutiko katikailangatligu tusalorugama meqsulaarsuti katersapaaliu rumaarniastilu tamanna inuuhatigiinnimuulingammat taakkuilsariaqitauluortuvini inuuhatigiinnimuut sungiutissautigiarma takinguvaangillu tamannapit utigitsugu taakkuunni Pauktuutiko meqsukainingani ilauslauruvu. Titauni vinni tu satu insur sengubanga atu tilasi manginakku. Imakata mai nunan ni bang wami tu nana matu ti simaga kota kalau mija aulo tau simaga teli echimani. Kaba manau tau sudah asia nunata tau lok simaga ma kakalawi net lunga echimani alam. Kisah teman nak. Nung naging ito monutso ni ani naktolo si mami iyo kalo teman natuti si Maribo.
Muwangali hano ilolak ni mga tali hawal makumasyo mayunga inak jo marwinyang ni naligusyo kami inak jo marlimani hanu ipinyang ni mga ta hawal makumakasyo kama ilon nang ipinyang ni hawal marurak sunga so mihamali hanwilok tu biniko ay malaka isumang walaka tu so mihamali.
Teachmani mirsukay na laro kata teko uwatinin nukaksi ikaruhata sugilo hanitulo ako mga milo uhatsiyahtas ti uwaguloy ni mariang soro uwigang selo inuhatigi tsiyalaw rugut taman aliang tuloro
alianak tuloro katimatsuti mirsugemi alianak tusong amisu sunni mirso hatigi sunni alianak tulor alianak fungali
teman mami sanne khawle khatta simi ku mami sakata khatta simi mitler misungalo teman pivelia niumi mami sanne solo sibuli pamarelme mami samai tutuni nilauna khanibu michimala rura suma khatta simagamalitay teman uwikatnongin nasama kisiani mami sanne teman pivelak tilogo akaw naksami ino katakatsia naksamila ino katanikati maguna siyan ni sami tema piu sa kasugol mayunga amaluka katakakon na silak sunga tay kolo ani ako tibinikay ilan ko ni ako tigalo kay kanwi ko na sugi naksakilak sugi sulipita kakalo sunga taga mo suli mamisak pali so kama minyarama katalangat sutlo walangat sutlo inuntini kanwi ngintini tamanano kalangat mamamisak niya ukhiliwali anak to sunino sama Amalo ino katitini katimatsi yemi alienak sisiugut suni teimitu mamisanatu tilak wagalo tamanna kausi mataka. Uvangale sivunitsa haktorivunga tamanna mamisautikito akuttigu amalo uvikangisanun unikauser talugu ilagigulta nukattiunlu khitongattiun leongutattiunlu uhaartatuaruttigu tamanna khawrimala mata khanuittu normangaatta tamanna sivuitsasiaguloriaqa
My name is Micah Arek.
And what's in the bag?
It's a quilt made by Inuit women in Igloolik. Ang naikayok from Igloolik. It's not completed yet, but I was told to bring it with me. When it's unveiled, it will stay in Igloolik. They were really grateful for being given an important task. They were honored to have the chance to commemorate residential school, and for residential school never to happen again in the future. The ladies will be making their own statements on the meaning of what they've designed when they have a chance during the unveiling, once the quilt is completed. This is made by Susan Avignon. She explained that it signifies different human beings in the world and how they're interconnected. It symbolizes ethnic backgrounds, but they're connected into one. Mayor Kuritarik made this one. It says 1912, Iglurigar Jungmut ticket to venir, Ixar Joa Makrog. Its translation is in 1912, two priests arrived to Chesterfield Inlet. All these have they have their own stories. Inuit children were picked up in their camps, forcefully taken away from their families, or their fathers freely or their uncles freely took them to the nearest community to be transported. This was also made by Deborah Wilmot Kauna. It says, love Wilmot Angiyok. This was made by Rebecca Malaki, Papa. She explained that whenever their children were preparing to leave to residential school, they would rush to make new clothing for them, but they always returned without the kamiks and without their garments that they had made prior to their departure. So this is how she explained to me, because they had to transport them by sailboat, homemade boat, sailboat, to the nearest community to be transported and taken to residential school, wherever it may be. This was made by Pipili Kunuk, Phoebe Kunuk. She said this was her, and this was her husband. He is deceased now, and she recalls her husband had to take the children by boat to Igloolik to be taken to Churchill, Manitoba. This was also made by Pipili Kunuk, but I'm not sure what it signifies. I mean, this particular one. This was made by Deborah Kauna Wilmot. That's it.
My name is Zakalik Partridge. I'm a spoken word artist based out of Montreal. I'm originally from Quilt in Nunavik. I started writing maybe 8 years ago. I just felt like I wanted some kind of creative outlet. I write about Inuit and about people, Inuit living in the south and also in the north. You create something and then you put it out there and it kind of, takes on a life of its own. I've heard other artists say that. Pauktuutit had asked me to do something for the virtual quilt, and immediately I thought about a project that I had sort of been sitting on. So this giant, she starts off she's living alone with her son, and life is pretty good. You know, her son goes hunting and all that. And then her son disappears, and he never comes back. And because of that, she becomes very angry, and she's grieving, but she's also just very, very angry, and she goes wandering about the world. And at one point in her wandering, she comes upon a village of Inuit, and she decides that she wants to destroy the village. She's going to cover all the igloos. But before she does that, she has to have a sleep because she's been wandering for a long time. And then she's awoken by a little boy who has gone out in the morning to go check the weather. And he hears somebody over the other side of the hill, and he goes to see, and it's this giant. And he's not afraid. And he goes and tries to wake her up, and she doesn't wake up, so then he starts singing a song, and eventually she wakes up, you know, and she's been angry even in her sleep, but when she sees the little boy, she forgets to be angry. And the end of the story is they end up just looking at the stars together. I guess the story is to talk about loss and the things that can happen to not make the loss go away, but to help with making it better.
So what is one word you think of when you hear the term residential school?
Ignorance.
When I heard about the program, I was actually attending a TRC meeting, and I was listening to some of the stories that have happened of survivors from the residential school. And so part of my program is to actually deal with mental health and cultural ways and different stuff. And I saw an ad for the virtual quilt while I was actually attending the meeting. And I thought it was a good opportunity for my participants to kind of come together and work on a project together that kind of surrounds mental health and healing, as well as kind of teaching them how to sew and other cultural stuff.
Do you feel your life has been impacted by residential schools?
Definitely. My grandmother, my father, all in residential schools. They didn't speak their language, therefore I don't speak my language.
So when I brought the topic up to our participants, I left it up to them to decide what they wanted to create. And they decided that they'd like to stick with the idea of creating a quilt. At the most, we've had 12 participants. It ranges, it's usually around 8 to 10. So each individual is gonna actually create their own square for the quilt and how they feel about residential school or an experience. Traditionally, women would kind of sew together and socialize in that way. And people around my age are showing an interest to learn how to sew because we were busy doing other things too. So now women who've become young moms who haven't had the opportunity to be taught to sew have the opportunity to come in and learn a traditional skill, as well as make healthy relationships with other women who have similar experiences.
How do you feel while you're working on this project?
Sometimes sad, and sometimes empowered.
Having projects like this is important because it shows people the actual impact of actions in history and how they continuously affect us. And I think having the media and having different projects out there is good because it allows people who are unaware of these things to become educated and to understand more about our people and what we've been through.
I'm Madeline Komotok from Pauktuutit, Nunavut. One of the employees called me from Pauktuutit and wanted to know if I knew about this, and I said no. And from that conversation, because I participated in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission when they were traveling to communities, I had an idea of what I wanted to do. I'm going to make a set of paintings, and they will be depicting scenes about the camp life when my parents were alive, before they were taken into the communities to be. The next scene will then be my parents with a child who was 4 at that time, and that child is one of my sisters who was taken away to Nova Scotia for 3 years. And in that particular scene, I'm going to concentrate on the parents, as it took away a lot of their authority and basically took their child away. From there, the different scenes will be, there's 8 of us in the family. 6 have left to residential school. So each painting will be a little different. And that was very, very hard on us siblings, and especially towards my parents. So that's what my theme will be on, siblings and parents' reaction to residential school. When the TRC came in to Pauktuutit, I had finally heard 2 of my oldest siblings talk about what they went through when one of the child was being taken away. The pain that I saw in each of my siblings were enormous. Now that I have my own grandchildren, I want to show the rest of what my world was at that time, when the government took children away to go to school. So it's passing on knowledge too. It's healing and passing on knowledge that I have now. Yeah.
My name is Linda Arsenault-Papatsi. We are in Ottawa, Ontario, on the Rideau Canal. My sister and I are making 4 dolls, a mother and a father, and 2 children. Inuit-specific designs, I suppose. In our culture, families are usually close, so I want to portray a little family of dolls. I want to show that we're close, united, and by taking children away from their families to residential schools, I want to show that, you know, that they can come back together as a family and heal together. So that's why I made the 4 dolls, my sister and I. We talked about a lot of our history, and actually while we were making the dolls, we found out that we had close immediate family that was affected. I had 2 aunts that were taken away to residential schools, and we didn't find that out until we started on this project. We talked about lessons learned. We showed each other sewing practices. We bonded a lot through this project, actually. One of the first weekends that we started on the dolls, my aunt came over, and because I wasn't aware about any effect that our family had, I asked her if we were immediately affected, and she said that her 2 sisters were taken away. And one of them passed a while ago, so we weren't able to ask her what her experiences were. And the other one, being up north, we haven't been able to ask her about her experiences. So it was through her other sister that we found out this information. When you take someone away from their family, of course there's gonna be trouble along the way. I don't know if you want to use that word, but I think substance abuse is a big one because of this, leading up to a lot of issues down the generations, like neglect. I've seen it firsthand, of course, and not knowing about it back then, but because I do now, especially like my cousins, like knowing that her mother went to residential schools, I am now able to reflect on what she dealt with when we were growing up, kind of thing. It doesn't just affect a family, it affects the whole community. I hope there's a positive outcome that comes from this, you know, and not just living in the past or negatively or pointing fingers or blaming. I hope we could just move on in a positive manner and learn from what we've seen. I think there is hope. I mean, you don't want to witness what the generations have gone through. There is potential and a lot of hope. Why? Because we can move forward. It would be not easy, but we can come out of this.
Aperiqaugavit so singorirlu tupilorumangmangaamnu taissumani soqamma imannatu mikinersautillungalunni omangat nutaraulunga aulartitauqataulorsimagama uqauseriauvallialermata pivalliayukku aksorunalorsimangman isimagiyumalaunginnakki taikwa atoqsimayavun kisiani ilingiarvingmi portuyumi ila silattoqsarviunerartaujumi PhD lerama aksornertukkuorlungalu
ya pekovitsiangana unungangangariaqarmaan
taikwa mikmaki elnungunerartaujut innutoqai taikani elsipoktukmi qauyumayakka tuksiujaujunga piyaritsaarniarama aqqutiqatsiarniarama ilingiaraaningnermun kisiani uvamni uppirisungillunga soorlu piyarerungneraluarlunga uvamni uppirisungillungalu pigama
North-South fusion. Straw bales in a tent.
Ammalo sinnaktuumalorama ima tupiliorumago siniktarpigilugu pingassunik taakwa oqumajjutigiyakka peerunnartu taimannat sinnaktuumalorsimaqama niuverpagiarlunga tupiksani sanayumallunga singori lo oqautigakku tupiliorniarama tappa ilagiakkannerungnarta uvannu unikkaalorsimangma taissumani
ila unikkaatuinnalorkunga tupirpimi tappasuku atoqqavu imanna haqiyuk takutsiarluku tamatuma teemana Pauktuutit tappa tupiliorviginiartavukku asuila imannaluniqartugiyumi teemanna palu teemanna tiasuna vatulaartavu ira qanorli tupilioqayarama qanorli manna qanu kaisumannerama qanu iliuqaqayaq imannaku tamannaqqiyuk aaqqittuqimmatapakkuat taineekkitiaatini Pauktuutit aksuarusalumai tappalu tupirpik
Tana tupilia ka lang sa mesa una. Ubago.
Makong ka.
Man na tuwa. Gusto pija ka tukar ng mapija pija ka niya lang sa mesa ka lang. Man ulit si mayo araw na sugila ko. Pija ako na ama. Tugat sa kaya nga bikilwak ka na. Kilwak ka lang ako masutya araw ma. Man na rin magsutuin na kaya ka pa. Man sudah. Udah misalnya itu kesian aku nih ada nukang lah.
Nukang ketolong.
Night to lame unikau yisi bagi. Du kising ni kovin anu ilang itu. Asu lagi ini istikai lagi ada tapi lagi ini kau ingat sasawaki ang iyong minaligi lagi insya kulugabi insya kulugabi Pinaniri